Hello, and welcome to Going Within. I am your host, Sheena C, and I am so delighted that you decided to take time out of your day to join us. Now, before we begin, I would like to take a moment to settle into this space. And if you can, I would like you to gently close your eyes or soften your gaze. Take a slow breath in and gently release it. Allow your shoulders to drop. Relax your jaw. Let your body settle. There's nothing you need to do right now. There's nothing you need to fix. Nothing you need to figure out. Just be here. Take another breath. And as you exhale, allow yourself to come home. Come home to yourself. This space is yours. A space to slow down, to reflect, and to listen. Because sometimes the most important voice is the quiet one inside of you. And when you're ready, let's go within. So you're listening to the Going Within podcast with Sheena C. This podcast is about self-awareness, healing, and learning to trust your inner voice. And in today's episode, we're talking about something very powerful. And that is listening to the inner voice that you ignored or have been ignoring. So the truth of the matter is, we all have an inner voice. I'm sure we all have come to that understanding by now. We have a quiet voice, a voice that's very gentle, it's all-knowing, and it's the feeling that guides us every day. But many times we choose to ignore that voice. Not because we want to per se, but because we learned how to doubt that voice. And today we're going to talk about 1, what your inner voice really is. 2, why we ignore it. 3, how to reconnect with it. And 4, how listening to it can change your life. So let's begin. What is your inner voice? Now, your inner voice is not something that is loud. It doesn't demand attention. It's very soft, gentle, and it whispers. And it usually shows up as a feeling, a knowing, or a sense of clarity, a simple, quiet thought. Maybe, perhaps. Sometimes it doesn't even use words. It's just a feeling that something feels right or something may feel a little bit off. And your inner voice is your intuition. I'm sure most of you have heard that term before. And your intuition is something that is always guiding you. It is always guiding you, no matter what you're doing. No matter where you are, no matter who you're with. Okay? And here's the thing though. Okay? Your intuition doesn't force you. It is something that allows you to choose. Okay? And because it's quiet, it's easy to overlook it. Very, very easy. Especially in this loud world that we're living in, filled with multiple distractions, too numerous to mention. There's all kinds of things going on. And that's when you go into silence, tying it back to the previous episode, that's when you can really begin to hear. So why do we ignore it? Why do we ignore our inner voice? Many of us were taught to, trust everything outside of ourselves. We were taught to do things like ask other people other than ourselves for advice, follow the expectations of society, do what we're told, and to ignore our feelings. And then what happens is over time, we begin to disconnect from our own voice. Okay? And when that begins to happen, we start doubting ourselves. And I'm sure those of you who are listening can relate. And I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a feeling about something and you just simply ignored it? Right? I'm sure most of you have. And maybe you felt something, it wasn't right. It feels a little bit off, so to speak. But you convince yourself somehow otherwise that is not what's happening. Maybe you might have stayed in a situation longer than you should have. I know I have. Maybe you've made a decision that didn't feel aligned with what you believe to be true or your morals, values. And later you realized you knew all along. You say things like, man, I knew it. I felt it. I felt something was off. I just couldn't put my finger on it. Well, that's your inner voice that was talking to you all along, that feeling that you had. And it's always, always there. Even when we ignore it, it's there. It's just an infinite thing. It's just always there. So, your inner voice often speaks through your body. Okay? You might feel things like a tight feeling in your chest, or a calm sense of knowing, a feeling of unease, you feel very uneasy, or a feeling of peace. It comes in multiple forms. And your body communicates before your mind truly grasps and understands what's actually happening. So that's your very first indicator. And when you learn to listen, you begin to trust yourself more. And you begin to go within yourself and follow that intuitive guide, so to speak, instead of always consulting others, okay, and seeking advice from others. And there's nothing wrong with seeking advice from others. However, it is most important that you seek your inner knowing first. And you can hear what others have to say, what their opinions may be. However, whatever they may say, if it's not in alignment with what you're feeling, always go with what you're feeling. Trust that inner voice above anyone else. And sometimes your inner voice may feel very calm, even when you're scared, even when you're afraid. Okay? You're in a very scary situation. And fear is a very loud thing. And in contrast, our intuition is a very quiet thing. Fear likes to rush, However, your intuition feels very calm and steady. And What makes you very powerful is learning the difference between the two. And that's how we go into why listening to your inner voice can feel scary. Listening to your inner voice can feel very scary. And because it sometimes requires change, and that can be very scary for a lot of people. A lot of people are scared and terrified of change. Change can feel very, very uncomfortable, and a lot of people do not like to sit in uncomfortability, right? Sometimes your inner voice might guide you to set firm boundaries with other people, and that might be uncomfortable, or even walk away. And then that might feel uncomfortable as well because you feel like you're being rude. It can also guide you to speak up for yourself. Open your mouth, your throat chakra. You open that third chakra and you speak your truth. You stand up for yourself. Sometimes it can be scary, but it will also guide you to try something new. Get out of the same old routine. Do a little something different. Or just guide you to let go. It could be letting go of a relationship, letting go of a job, letting go of the things that no longer serves your purpose, no longer is aligned with the path that you're set on for yourself. And that can be scary. That's very relatable. And it can feel very, very difficult for most of us, because they require courage. And courage is something that you have to build. You have to build up the courage. So instead, what we tend to do as human beings is we ignore the voice. And it's not that we don't hear it per se, but it's because we're not ready to follow. And that's the thing. We're like, I don't think I'm ready. I'm not ready to go that way right now. Not right now. And that's okay. Growth is something that usually takes time. So be gentle with yourself. Trust also usually takes time. So also be gentle with yourself on that. Reconnection also takes time. And then we go into how do we reconnect with ourselves? And I'm going to tell you how to do that. The first step is you have got to slow down. You've got to slow down. Your inner voice lives in stillness, right? So you have to slow down, else it won't work. It won't cooperate with you. And when you're a person that's constantly busy, it's much, much harder to hear, like we discussed in the last episode, the silence. When you're too busy, it's much, much more difficult to hear. So now that we are aware of our inner voice, it's time for us to create moments of quiet, to sit in the uncomfortable silence. Maybe you may want to take a walk, which is something that I personally do. I love walking. Or even journal your thoughts. That's another outlet. You can also do things like deep breathing exercises. And you can also ask yourself gentle questions. For example, you can ask yourself questions like, what feels right? Or what feels off? Or what is it that I truly want in this moment? You don't need the answers immediately. All you need to do is listen. And over time, your inner voice becomes much, much clearer. Okay, it's something that you put into practice, just like any other thing. You're playing sports, you've got to practice, and then you become great. a great athlete. It's the same thing. You want stronger muscles? You got to keep working those muscles constantly to build them up so you can be stronger. Okay? So now, once you put that into practice, what happens is you learn how to trust yourself again. Now you're building trust with yourself. You're trusting your inner voice. It's just like building any other relationship. The more you listen, the stronger it becomes. And you can start with very small decisions, and then you can slowly notice what feels the most aligned with you and what you're feeling. You start to notice what doesn't feel aligned and what do feel aligned. And I would advise you to celebrate when you do listen. Give yourself a pat on the back, because that's a big accomplishment in itself. Because most of us don't. Even though it may sound like something so simple, the truth of the matter is, in this busy world that we're living in, most of us do not slow down and listen. We are constantly distracted. So, your self-trust will grow, like I said, with practice. And then over time, you begin to feel more confident in your choices. And that's how it happens. Now you're no longer relying only on the outside voices of your friends, your peers, your family members, your partners, advice and opinions of any outside sources like news articles or things of that nature. Now you're listening to yourself. You're listening to you. And when you listen to your inner voice, something begins to shift inside of you. You will begin to feel a lot calmer, okay? And people will notice. They'll be like, you used to be turned up. And now you're much more suave, you're much more calm. People will begin to notice. Your mind will be, more clearer, and then you will feel more grounded. That's the one. The grounding. And why do you think that is? Well, that's because you're no longer forcing things, right? You're flowing with what feels true, not what feels like something that you have to do, but something that you feel like that's more aligned with who I am. And then life begins to feel more aligned, more grounded, more peaceful. But that doesn't mean that everything becomes perfect. I want you to take that into consideration. Okay? It doesn't mean that everything becomes perfect, especially immediately. So don't get it twisted. However, you will begin to feel more at peace. And peace is luxury, especially in this day and age. Peace is a luxury. Because you're not living in alignment. You're not now you're living in alignment with yourself and not outside of yourself, right? And this is what the podcast is all about. So today I want you to take a moment to reflect. Okay? When was the last time that your inner voice spoke to you? Maybe it was a feeling, maybe it's a feeling to take this street, not that one that you usually take home from work. Just try this one today. Or maybe it was just a quiet thought or a sense of knowing something. You just knew without even really thinking about it. And ask yourself, what have I been ignoring? What feels true to me right now? What is my inner voice trying to tell me? And there's no rush. I just need you to listen. Just listen. And in closing, I just want to assure you that your inner voice has always been there. It never left you. It simply just waited and waited and waited all these years, waited for you to listen again. And this week, I challenge you to try something simple. I want you to pause, take a breath, and then ask yourself, what feels right? In whatever moment you choose, what feels right in this moment? And then I just want you to listen. Your inner voice will definitely guide you. Okay? And I just want to thank you for spending this time with yourself today. If something resonated with you today, I want you to sit with it. You don't need all the answers right now, just your honesty. And until next time, keep going within. Thank you. I love you. Ciao.
I'm going within today. You're in my mind, I'ma be okay. A little love goes a long way. So I'm going within today. I'm going within today. You're in